Come here. Come here.
To Amber, trauma is a get out of jail free card.
You will subscribe to Delululand.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Uhari, and this is Delululand. I'd like to sincerely thank all my new subscribers and viewers. You guys are amazing. I'm completely overwhelmed by this support, and like I usually say, YouTube isn't a human right. I'm not entitled to this platform or your time, so thank you for sharing it with me. Okay, let's get into it. Today I'm going to be talking about the dainty queen herself, the very queen of Delululand, the reason I started this channel, Miss Amberlynn
I pooped my pants.
Reid. See, Miss Amberlynn Reid is one of the world's most prolific narcissists. You see, Miss Amberlynn Reid is a special case in not being able to or willing to see outside of herself. I'm not going to make a fat joke. I'm going to let your brain do it. See, Amberlynn had a very difficult upbringing. Her parents were very neglectful to the point of her having to be taken to foster care. She had a series of guardians throughout her entire life, and she never really felt a sense of security and home. She has memories from her foster care experience that are extremely difficult for her to talk about, that she isn't open about, and that she hasn't really fully processed. Amber's parents have had lifelong struggles with addiction. Addiction is a way of self-soothing, and then it plays into the economic state that they have. There's so much lore and context behind what we as the internet know as Amberlynn
I pooped my pants.
Reid. I'm giving you all this context because if you are a person who feels empathetic, hearing about a child going through such experiences would immediately incite a feeling of sympathy for the adult. You might be more understanding or tolerant of their negative behaviors because you keep trying to make up for the care that their inner child didn't receive. So because they didn't receive understanding from their parents, you try to lend that kind of understanding to their behaviors as adults. To say, okay, I understand certain boundaries or certain things you didn't get. There's then the trauma that you have that you need to process. And I, for example, as a person who grew up within a nuclear family whose parents are still together, who love each other, who never had home insecurity or food insecurity, who had somebody that I could always run to with my emotions. When I first encountered Amberlynn, I looked at her from a position of privilege, the privilege of growing up in a nuclear family that is filled with love, the privilege of being taken care of by my caretakers. All of that, when I first encountered Amber, felt like I was sitting on a pile of treasure. And I cannot judge her the same way I would somebody who grew up in similar socioeconomic circumstances and somebody who grew up with a similar family that provides not only for the physical needs, but the psychological one. I wouldn't judge that kind of person in the same way that I would judge Amberlynn. And by judge, I don't mean condemn. I just mean the standard of accountability to which I would hold their behavior. Sometimes, for example, something will happen, my mother will hurt my feelings. And my dad will talk to me and he'll be like, you need to understand the context of your mother's upbringing. My mother didn't have a father. She never got to meet her father. My mother was raised for her younger years by a different caretaker than my grandmother. Those are very formative years. So sometimes my mother may say things that hurt my feelings, but it's the kind of thing that she has no awareness of. So she wasn't doing it to be malicious. And because she doesn't have certain experiences, that plays into her reactions. But my mom loves me. And my mom works hard to improve herself. When we were younger for Mother's Day, my sisters and I got my mom this book. Some prayer book, mother book, blah, blah, I can't remember. But my mom read the book and she implemented a lot of the positive things the book said to this day. So my mom is the type of person who's willing to learn and change. That's having parents who have a good character. Emma didn't have that. So I wouldn't judge her the same way. Because when it's like, who raised you? A bunch of different people. That's who. Who raised you? The streets. Who raised you? Foster care. Who raised your guardians? Where are your manners? All over there. Didn't have a time to be completely enveloped in the womb of childhood. On the surface, it would be cruel for me to say, don't be manipulated by her foster care stories. Because it seems like I'm diminishing the impact or the relevance or the trauma of those moments. But when I say the statement, don't allow yourself to be manipulated by her foster care experience, I say this because Amber has had ample time to heal from her trauma, and instead she monopolizes and monetizes her fucked up childhood. Amber only brings up her foster care experience when she wants to amplify her self-victimization. Amber recently brought up the passing of her foster mom. And she brought this up when she was trying to deflect blame and accountability for the neglect that she has towards her pets and her role in the vanishing of her cat, Rarity. She was getting a lot of heat. So what does she do? She comes up and she tells people about the death and how sad she is that she wasn't able to be at the funeral. And the death had happened a significant time prior to her losing Rarity and the internet coming for her for various reasons surrounding it. To Amber, trauma is a get out of jail free card. And when you're dealing with adults like Amber who weaponize their trauma, you will find yourself stuck in a world of manipulation. And they will weaponize your own empathy against you. And they will enforce guilt onto you for wanting to step up for yourself, for fighting for your rights. They will completely absolve themselves of responsibility to apologize for the actions that they took upon you by tossing that responsibility to their neglectful caretakers and their childhood and the impact it had on them. But when somebody has for years had enough money to go and get treatment and resolve this childhood trauma, the person who instead has been publicly monetizing for years her abusive behavior towards her partners, this person is not somebody who you should spend your sympathy and your empathy on. Bottle it up and Give it to somebody else.
My fiance told me that she's calling me an abuser and a racist.
So not only was I being physically abused, but I was pretty much being like RAPE, rain and petals, eavesdrop. I used the wrong word. Rain and petals, eavesdrop. I used the wrong word.
That got my blood
Rain
boiling
and petals, eavesdrop. I used the wrong
because that's not true.
Like, I genuinely deep down don't feel like people understand me. What exactly is your foster care timeline? Because we are all so confused. So it does sound confusing because I was in foster care from the ages of 8 to 18. I was ward of the state. And I know you guys hear me talk a lot about, well, when I was younger, my parents, my dad, my this, my that, my grandma. And then you guys go, but wait a minute, I thought you were in foster care. So let me explain. So I was 8 years old when I was first taken from my parents. That is when I became ward of the state. In and out of foster homes, shelters, and group homes. I was 13 years old when they made the decision, okay, we're gonna give your parents a chance. It's gonna be considered a trial. You're gonna live with them. You're still gonna be ward of the state, but you're gonna live with them and see how they do as parents. That lasted a year and a half. I was then taken again out of my parents' home at 15 and put back and forth, bouncing around. So from 8 to 18, I lived with my parents for a year and a half of that time. But during all this other time of when I was in foster homes, group homes, shelters, I was allowed visitation. Visitation always changed depending on my age, how my parents was doing, where I was living. Sometimes we were only able to be in like this tiny little room with supervision. Then as I got a little older, all of a sudden my dad was allowed to pick me up. My mom was allowed to pick me up. They were allowed to take me for the day, or they could take me for a couple hours. Like, it was always different. But for the most important times of my life, the first 8 years, I was in a brutal home. Brutal. And then at 8, for a decade, I never knew safety. I never knew home. I was always with strangers, shelters, group homes. I never even knew that actually while living with my parents. I never knew safety. I never knew warmth. Like, those years are detrimental to a human. And the trauma of my childhood and my teenage years, like, it broke me. I was broke due to someone else's fault. Having to fix something I didn't break hurts.
Your trauma is not your fault. The healing of your trauma is your responsibility. Amber is a person who in general lacks accountability, and you can see that with how much weight she's gained. I mean, I don't know of many YouTubers who have gained over 200 pounds over the course of their YouTube career. Amber wants to do whatever she wants to do when she wants to do it. Her relationship with pain is that of pleasure. She wants to soothe pain. She wants to feel pleasure. That is why she will jump from relationship to relationship, because she uses infatuation as healing from a broken relationship. And it's not. So she just compounds and compounds and compounds all this negative energy from never processing any of her pain or trauma successfully. But she has had every opportunity to do so. And she refuses to do it. And she baits her audience into thinking she's doing it because she knows her audience, a significant portion of her audience, which she ignores. She knows that they want her to get better. They want her to be able to lose weight and to be able to heal from her trauma. And they know that this is something that can help her, something that can be effective. They want what's best for Amber. And instead of being accountable to those people, She will focus everybody's attention to the people who hate her and treat her with hate. And she will say, everything bad that's happened to me is because of those people. You don't like me or anybody else because of those people. The only reason anybody dislikes Amberlynn, according to Amberlynn, is her weight. That says a lot. That says that she completely identifies herself by her weight. Amber is nothing without her super morbid obesity. It's how she gets attention. Would she have ever had a channel that went off if she was just a person who was normal sized and all she does is what she does? No. Her channel is about a super morbidly obese person doing everyday mundane things. The trauma that she wants you to feel sorry for her for, that's her meal ticket. And that's a choice that she has made. So pray tell, why the fuck should you feel sorry for her? Amber is a documented domestic abuser.
Now, the places she said about being hit, those were on me. Those were the exact places she hit me. I was the one being abused. And I will say this, I may have laid a hand on her a few times. That was in self-defense. I didn't do it, and I damn well did not rape her. I did not rape her. Period. One time, when my mom and Dave were out, I don't know why we argued, but I was put on the bed. She wailed on me. Beat me real bad. I remember this clear as day.
Memories are kind of like fading here and there.
Our bed was in the living room. Next to the bed was a dresser. In front of the dresser was a table. Between the table and the bed was her, over me, wailing on me. At that point, I was 17 years old.
Amber is a documented emotional and financial abuser. You can see that on her channel. This is not a rumor. You can watch her videos for years and see her abuse her partners, particularly Beck. This person who wants you to feel sorry for her because she grew up in foster care denied an ex-partner time with her dying mother. Beck's mother will never come back to life, ever. She will never get that time back. Beck had years in which they weren't working. Years that would be missing on a resume. Years they took off because Amber manipulated them into thinking that they would be taken care of so that they wouldn't have to compound on the injury that they have by being on their feet all day, and they could spend more time with their parents and their loved ones and their family and her. And instead, what happened? She saw her family less than she had prior to being in that relationship. She saw them less than she did when she had a full-time job. Beck relied on Amber for financial security. And when Amber and Beck broke up, when Beck broke up with Amber, Amber was very bitter. She always thought of herself as being better than Beck, and the idea of being dumped by the person she thought she was better than pissed her off, because she never really loved Beck. You don't love somebody you abuse to that extent. She was just mad because her ego was hurt. How dare Beck be the one to break up with me? She was at the point where she was almost back to her highest weight. She's not bathing herself. She doesn't have a car to go places or do things to make content. She can't carry a live stream alone for too long. So what does she do? She says, okay, Beck, if you do these videos with me, because Beck could be doing anything during that time, looking for a fucking job, because at this point, they're not in a relationship with Amber. Amber says, could you do the videos with me and I'll give you a portion of the revenue? Beck never got that money to this day. Our little foster care victim has not paid back her victim to this day. Our foster care victim never paid back her domestic abuse victim. She's an abuser. She inflicts trauma onto people and they have to deal with it. Her first serious partner that she lived with for years, he had to go through so much psychological healing in order to be able to be in a relationship because Amber abused him that much. She was older than him when they got together. He was a minor when she was living with him. She was a legal adult who was manipulating a minor to beg their mother into having Amber stay there. This is the woman who wants you to feel sorry for her. There are therapists making bank off of Amber's exes. So no, you should not feel sorry for her. Amber's a piece of shit. If you don't subscribe, you will be
smacked down by the Lord.